Let's circle back to our top stories. Singapore has identified new threats in its latest report on terrorism financing. It highlighted cross-border payment systems and online fundraising as emerging risk areas. Now, for more on how money can flow to finance terror, we speak next to Radish Singh. She is EY ASEAN Financial Services Risk Management Leader. Ms. Singh, thank you so much for joining us today. First of all, I want to understand digital payment tokens a little more. They can typically be traced through blockchain. Isn't that their value proposition? Isn't that how it was sold to us in the beginning? So how can it be exploited by terrorists?
Yeah, so thank you for having me, Jill. And that's a good question, because typically when you look at digital payment token, they do transact on blockchain, which means that the lineage of that transaction is there. However, the problem with crypto virtual asset trading is really that the underlying information may be missing. So there is anonymity involved, and various of these coins typically actually don't, or the exchanges themselves provide anonymity as one of the service, which means that the originator and beneficiary information can be missing. Though there are international guidelines, which we call travel rule, that in well-regulated jurisdictions, these entities will have to provide for that. But that's not always the case, and that's why the risk associated with this for terrorist financing is because there's anonymity. There's also speed to transaction, and the very nature of digital assets, which is cross-border. So payments can flow from any country to any country. Yeah,
I want to talk about cross-border in a minute, but first I want to get your opinion on CrossB. Now, that's a centralized digital platform by our central bank, and it says it's to help facilitate customer sharing information about among the financial institutions to combat specifically money laundering, terrorism financing, and proliferation financing globally. So basically, it's a platform that has been specifically created for this. Is it working? Has it helped actually the misuse of digital payment tokens for terror financing?
So CrossB will in due course. It's new. It's yet only been a few months that it's been operational. So in due course, the very construct of CrossB will facilitate the sharing of information across amongst financial institutions, and hopefully, obviously our aspiration is that eventually it will also allow Singapore to disrupt networks that are involved in money laundering generally, or terrorist financing, as it were. Now, as you know, with CrossB, there are three key risks that are already part of or within the ambit of CrossB.
Okay.
But terrorist financing, I think, will come in due course. Right now, when we look at CrossB, it's actually proliferation financing, so slightly different type of risk that is being addressed insofar as CrossB is concerned.
Right, so it's still somewhat untested, but its remit could be expanded, as you said.
The remit of CrossB will increase in due course.
All right, and I suppose it's built to do that.
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
Indeed.
The other thing I want to talk about is crowdfunding. It's very popular, for all kinds of causes around the world, right? And usually people do this online through credit card, debit cards. Why is this mode in trouble of opening another channel for terror funding? Is it very risky?
So crowdfunding, with the international standard setting agencies have been talking about this, that crowdfunding is susceptible to terrorist financing. Now, the reason being that the very nature of crowdfunding, it obviously democratizes the approach or the access to funding. Now, what happens with that is that terrorists, and there are reports suggesting that terrorists or people associated with these type of activities can use crowdfunding to for funding, really, right? So that's the crux of the matter. How do they do that? There are ways to do it through pretending to be an NGO, pretending to seek sympathy. They could also be promoting hate. They may not directly be promoting terrorist financing or terrorist activity, but they could be promoting hate and so on and so forth. So it is susceptible for terrorist financing because they are dealing with general public in terms of appealing for funds. They could be using, like I said, an NGO setup. They could be using social media platform, which is very accessible.
Especially to children. I know my children come to me for crowdfunding, requests and things like that.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, right? Yeah, and the other thing is also the use of digital assets to pay for crowdfunding. So it is therefore susceptible. It's one of the risks that internationally, people like us who work within this sort of financial crime compliance type of work, we know for a fact that crowdfunding is rather susceptible to any kind of money laundering risk, and obviously also terrorist financing.
Okay, interesting to know. What about banks and payment services? Are they doing enough to help stop payments from falling into the hands of terrorists? And what would you like to see them do more?
So, Jill, banks have spent billions of dollars globally, in trying to put in the right frameworks in place, right? There is a report suggesting that in Asia Pacific alone, banks are spending something like $45 billion in their financial crime compliance, frameworks that they put in place. Now, are they doing enough? Absolutely. The issue with terrorist financing and detection of terrorist financing is that generally the sources from which these funds come from are legitimate sources. There are people like you, me, anyone that may be duped into providing that funding, or they could also be people that sympathize with these kind of activities or these groups, for example, right, that conduct terrorist activities. So one is that legitimate sources, and two, the quantum is very small. That makes detection that much more difficult. Right?
Oh, we've got time for one more question, Ms. Singh. Talk about the cross-border online payment issue. You started talking about that. Unlicensed remittances through cross-border online payments. That's something, our migrant workers are involved with quite a lot. Do they tend to fall prey to this sort of issues?
Well, they do, and there was a case in Singapore, right? I think it's public knowledge. It's out there, and the quantum is very small, as you may have seen, or our viewers would have seen. They are susceptible because the access is easy, right? They are, and the cost to remit funds back to their home country is negligible. So obviously in Singapore now, if you've seen through the press releases by the agencies, they will be reaching out to migrant workers to create awareness and ensure that licensed money brokers or money service providers will be available close to their accommodation, etc. Right, so that they have access to licensed money changers rather.
So quite simple steps, that they can take in those areas. Other steps not so simple. So nice to have you with us. Come back and speak with us again soon.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I've been speaking there with Radish Singh, EY ASEAN Financial Services Risk Management Leader.